is the Detroit Lions playing in the late game, the Monday night game. Sorry, the Sunday night into Monday morning game. Beating the Houston Texans 26-23, moving on to 8-1 on the season now. This Detroit Lions team. I mean, everyone in Germany anyway had a collective thing of like everyone likes the Lions. Everyone thinks that this Lions team could be really something. There's actually a few things I will say to you, but I had a Lions fans say before this game, well, the night before this game, in fact. So it wasn't after seeing Jared Goff throw 5 interceptions, which is it's going to be the headline for this game, really, isn't it? Rather than Detroit winning, is the fact that Goff had really quite a terrible time in large portions of this game against the Houston Texans defense. What did you make of it?
Yeah, he really struggled in this one, and I mean it was outside, so we're gonna have to throw that one into it that he struggled outside again. But 5 interceptions, he's got 2 touchdowns. QBR rating of 29.1 is worse than Daniel Jones's one, so that's how bad it was. Yeah, it was a tough night for him, and the Texans just constantly brought pressure onto him, and he couldn't deal with it at all. And I'm trying to remember who their right tackle is, but he was out injured, and that I think really didn't help the situation. And so the O line had a couple of injuries on it, and I think that didn't help. And then Goff did what he normally does when you put a load of pressure on him, and he just really struggled to do much, to be honest. And really, it was a mixture of the a bit of the run game, sort of like starting to get. There was a couple of chunk plays from Gibbs and Montgomery, which I think kind of turned the tide a little bit in the second half. And then Goff kind of did get a few plays where he wasn't too bad, and he sort of like got the job done. But yeah, I mean, this is a game that they shouldn't have won. Really, the Texans should have won this, and it kind of was I mean, obviously, like they're missing Stephon Diggs, they were still missing Nico Collins due to injury, and it's really costing them that because they looked in the first half, they got in quick, they scored very quickly, looked good. And then in the second half, they didn't put any points up at all, and it all kind of just fell away. And it just felt like there was a bit of an inevitability that the Lions were going to get this, and it kind of like in a weird kind of way, because the Lions are very different to the Chiefs in the way that they play, but there was that inevitability about it, which you get with the Chiefs now, and the Lions. It kind of felt like no matter how bad Goff was, no matter how many people got injured. I mean, Sam Laporta ended up coming out getting injured. It kind of just didn't matter, because you just kind of got that feeling that they're just going to get there in the end, and they did. So, yeah, a game that the Texans will probably feel that they've lost, and that they should have won, but this Lions team just keeps sort of chugging along, and I think it's going to be near impossible to stop them until you reach the playoffs.
I think this game probably has said the most about them this season, in a way. Like, we all know they were pretty good, and there's a collective love for Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn, the OC and DC around the league and around fans and NFL people alike, and it shows. It's sort of that really corny saying, when you're gonna crumble or you're gonna be morphed into the diamond that you become, and they are turning into this team that has had adversity. I think wins like that in this league are sometimes more of a catalyst than most things like that, than most other things that happen in this league, because it shows, we were not good, terrible, 5 interceptions, and we still came away with a win. Like that shows a lot about this team and the character of this team, which I don't think has ever been that's never been a question mark over this team or a doubt this team. It may have been about Jared Goff on points, but he's played at an MVP level this season. Yeah, he's had a bad game here, but I think he's going to bounce back. I don't think this rocks him too much. If he gets 5 picks in this game and then gets picked, I don't know, let's pull a number out of the air, six more times the rest of the season. He's done well down the stretch then, hasn't he? So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they got their like bounce back effects from this next week. On the other side of it, the Texans, back-to-back losses now. I know they're without big key players in this team, but they've really just lost a step this year. CJ Stroud is not playing at the level he was playing at last year, and I think not many people have been saying, like, no one's really said that much about that. I don't think.
No, I don't think it has. I think injuries have kind of been the excuse that they've managed to sort of get away with it a little bit. But yeah, he has struggled a little bit this year. I mean, his QBR rating was 33.0 in this game, so it wasn't fantastic at all. I think that they've just been decimated with injuries, like all season as well. It's not like they've had a couple of guys go out for, say, like 2-3 games. It's like, Nico Collins has been out for 5 weeks now, possibly 6. Obviously, Stephon Diggs isn't going to play now. Joe Mixon lost about 3 or 4 weeks earlier on. You've now got Will Anderson out as well on the defense, and it just kind of all feels a little bit like they are getting hit quite badly through injuries. And, when John Mechie is your receiver with the most yards on the game, it's a little bit like it's just not really happened. And, Tank Dell hasn't been the same guy as last year. So, yeah, it's really difficult. And I think the other thing is, and I do kind of believe this a bit, because there's other teams that are like this. The Falcons are definitely a team like this. When I feel like the Texans have really prioritized the run this year compared to what they did last year. I think Mixon has been a big part of it, and they've wanted to use the run. And even when Mixon was injured, it was like Cam Akers was doing quite a bit. Agumbawale was doing quite a bit. I think certainly with the Falcons, I noticed with Kirk Cousins, when he gets into a rhythm and he's passing the ball consistently, it gets better. And it feels like that might be the same with Stroud a little bit, by because last year he was throwing the ball a hell of a lot more than what he was this year. And it just kind of feels a bit like whether he's just not getting into the rhythm of things. And maybe that's why he's struggling. But yeah, I mean, this Texans team has just been taken out by injuries. And I think they were 23-7 at the half and didn't score another point. And obviously, like, you're playing against a really good team, so you've got to come out and give the Lions the credit that they deserve. But you got to be looking at getting some points in the second half. Just to completely do nothing at all, even if you're just getting a few field goals, it feels like that was the problem. And I don't know if it was almost a little bit of like, oh, we're in the lead, we got to protect it, or whether it was just, it just reached the point where they just couldn't do anything because the Lions just had the momentum and that was the end of it, sort of thing. But yeah, it's a tough one. It's a really tough loss, and I think I don't think it matters. I think they'll still win the division. I think they're the best team in that division. But the problem is that obviously not against the Lions, but once you reach the playoffs and you play a team of this sort of caliber, are you just going to fall away again? And it kind of feels like they might.
It sort of felt like at the end of last year that it was like, oh, this team could like legit have a good chat. Like this team could think about an AFC Championship this year. They made the moves that would indicate that.
Yeah.
And then really it feels like they're taking a bit of a step back in some sense, not every sense of the word, but yeah, I don't know. They seem to they excited and enthralled this year, last season, and I don't remember many Texans games this year where I've been really sort of wowed by them, I suppose.
No,
if I can recall.
I think it's a fair thing to come out and say that everybody probably expected them to kick on a bit more than what they have done. And I think a lot of that is due to the injuries and missing guys. I wouldn't know. I can't remember them having any particular big injuries last year. And I do wonder if that's kind of where the problem has come in, and it just hasn't quite worked out for them because of that. But yeah, I think it's been a tough season so far for them.
They've been in every game. Well, most
Yeah,
games they've been in as well. I
yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they got blew out by the Vikings 34-7, and they smashed the Patriots 41-21. I mean, every other game,
Has
touchdown,
been
about a
close.
touchdown in it for most games. Maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. But they've kept themselves in games, and I'd sort of said this before on the podcast a lot of times. It is a measuring stick of teams. When you're having them margins, the fine margins are what push you over the line, and that's you can sometimes lean on the wrong side of it, or you can sometimes lean on the right side of it, and you may not be you may just be a good team, but if them wins and them results are going your way, you suddenly you put on that pedestal just a little bit more, and maybe 6-4 is a margin that's actually that could have been very easily the other way round. It could have easily been 8 wins. It could have easily maybe been 2 wins. If some of these teams had got over the line against them. So I think there's a lot to come from this team. The thing I was going to say about the Lions was we sort of had an interesting conversation over the weekends about potential coaching moves and stuff like that. And admittedly, this was quite a drunk fan, but I had never heard anyone said this before. And we were saying, well, we think Ben Johnson's probably going to be the hottest property in the coaching market next year. And he was like, I don't think Ben Johnson's going to go anywhere. And we were like, how can you? He's going to be on everyone's lips. And he was like, one word, dynasty. He was like, I think there's a little bit of a thing with Dan Campbell where they all really believe in him and really want that style. And really, I know Belichick had, he had different coordinators throughout his tenure at New England, but a lot of them stayed there for a long time.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out for never worked out for Matt Patricia, never worked out for the OC whose name has completely just escaped my brain.
Josh McDaniels.
Never worked out for him anywhere.
No.
What's to say that Ben Johnson goes somewhere and it doesn't work, and and he comes, maybe goes back to the Lions. I don't know. I just thought it was a very interesting take that I'd never heard.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, he will be the hottest, name that people will go for because of the way that the offense plays. I mean, that everyone's going to want any team that has a vacancy is going to want him. But I think it's. I mean, I can understand that the idea of a dynasty and sort of trying to do that. I just feel that as great that they're not there yet. I still think you can beat them over the top defensively. I think that's their weakness. I don't think it's been sorted out. The guys that they have brought in have got the potential to sort it out, but they haven't got there yet. And I mean, if you had them in a one-off game against the Chiefs, yes, they have a chance to win. But they won't because it's the Chiefs. And that's the end of it. And that's the problem. It's very difficult to have a dynasty when you've got another team already having the dynasty. I think that's where the problem's going to be for them. So if he thinks about it in that way, I think at some point he might stick around for another year or two with the Lions in the hope that they can get over the line. But all the time you've got this happening on the other side, it's going to be very, very difficult. And I just think that eventually he's going to want to be his own guy.
I agree. I agree that eventually you're probably going to want it. I think every coach wants that. I think every coach wants to give it a go at least. And sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does.
But the one thing I would say is I do think he's going to make sure that he goes to an organisation that's really ready. Set up pretty well and he's just missing the head coach kind of organisation. He would. I could never ever see him turning up at somewhere like the Panthers. It's got to be somewhere where it's like everything is pretty okay. They've just need a new coach. But
Dallas.
I don't know about whether you would say everything's okay other than the head coach.
Right, let's